Thank you, Anqi, for bringing us together. It's my great honor to present here. So also I have a big pressure following Paul's wonderful talk. So today my lecture will introduce some basic concepts in the deep learning approaches, especially their applications in neuroimaging and challenges when we are doing applications in the mental disorders. So I'm Jing Sui from Beijing Normal University. Okay, so first, my research direction. So actually, I'm doing the data fusion approaches and using multimodal and multi-site big imaging data analysis. So in my lab, we have mainly two directions. So the first is like a multimodal fusion analysis. We are trying to combine different neuroimaging techniques to help us better understand the multiple psychotic disorders such as schizophrenia, major depression, and bipolar. And on the other side, we are trying to identify some potential biomarkers that could facilitate us for the personalized treatment. And also, we are doing some risk prediction. So in this talk, I will have 4 parts. So first, I will introduce why we should use some deep learning in the neuroimaging, and the next, I will introduce some basic network deep learning frameworks in the neuroimaging, and next, I will introduce some existing popular applications, and finally, I will introduce some challenges and directions. So currently, we know that collecting different neuroimaging techniques from single subjects has been a common practice, which is rare in the previously. And we know that different imaging techniques provide complementary information in both spatial and temporal. And the challenges is how we could combine those very heterogeneous data to make us get idea that could help us in the real clinical practice. And this is DL trend in the neuroimaging. This is in our 2022 survey, but now we can see that the data was a little out of date, but we could still see this boost trend on the deep learning that has increased vastly. Well, when we check all their distributions of the modalities, we could see that at that time, the structural MRI still dominates all those imaging types in all those imaging techniques. And also the second row is functional MRI, and then multimodal and diffusion MRI. But we could see that now recently more and more applications have focused on the rest of MRI. So I think the proportion might change a bit now. So then we focus on the MRI. We know that MRI could provide us very crucial insight on the functional and structural information of the brain, like this functional different variation under different tasks, and also the structural morphometry and the white matter trajectory. And on those different types, what can we use different neural networks smartly and trying to combine their advantages? So that's the main challenge. Well, also we know that the artificial intelligence now presented by the deep learning has made breakthroughs in various fields, especially the computer vision and also the natural language processing, and also in the biomedical applications such as molecular modeling. With the help of those computational power and big data. And also, first, especially in the computer vision, we could see that mostly the DL was used in the image classification, image generation, and image understanding, which we could tell the meaning from even a feature. Well, also in the natural language processing, it will help us to classify the text and also for the machine translation. And now recently with development of GPT, we could see that the AI could help us to generate the text and also help us polish those manuscripts. While all those applications were focusing on the natural images and the text, what's the difference between these and the neuroimaging data? So we could see that compared to the natural images, which is easy to acquire, and also when they are trained, usually use the million samples. The neuroimaging data actually is costly to acquire. So usually, most of the cases we used were less than the 10,000. But now, with the help of ABCD, UKB, and also like Enigma, many open access data, we could get more and more data to help us to perform those deep learning. And also for the feature characteristics, the previously natural language usually are just 2D, while in the fMRI we could have a 3D structure and 4D fMRI data. So this is also give us a big challenge how to deal with those raw form. And also for the data set labeling, for the natural language, it's easy for us to label it, and we know that it's intuitively. Well, for the mental disorders, the problem is that when we want to classify, we could see that many mental disorders, their impairment was spanning and not specific. We could find not a very specific lesions for many disorders. So therefore, this is also give us challenge how to identify the real useful imaging markers. And finally, on those interpretation, we could see that the interpretation in the neuroimaging usually is much more difficult and challenging. After we got the results, we usually need to some longitudinal, like a longitudinal validation on the same subjects, or some external validation from different other sites to help us verify that our results work. And also for the MRI data, we met such challenges like high dimension, limited sample size, and varying data site, and also the site difference. So the core challenges is how we could design those DL algorithms that will be suitable for MRI to effectively extract these hidden layers in MRI and apply them in the neuroimaging data. So as for the fMRI, today I will basically introduce fMRI, use the example of fMRI and the structure. And we could see that for each MRI data, we usually could extract various features from those time series and the spatial maps, also the brain formometry, and we could, based on the time series, to calculate those functional connectivities, which will give us some graph structure. Well, based on those different structures, what we need is to using a multi-level representation of deep learning to help us extract those complex mappings from these basic and non-clear meanings from the intuitively. Then in this field of neuroimaging, so usually we are applying this deep learning in the categories of disease classification, biomarker identification, and some subtype discovery. So we also need to thankful to the ability of the large imaging data set that makes the DL models more feasible nowadays. So, so this feature just gave a basic idea is how we could choose different networks when we're using the different MRI features. So for the time courses, usually those recursive neural networks like RNN will help us to learn the accumulated information. And for the spatial maps, usually we could use like a CNN to help us extract those spatial variants. We will also introduce like GAN and VAE, how this is implied to the MRI data. And also in the other challenge is how to interpret this data if we applying this deep learning in the neuroimaging. How we could verify that the results we got is really useful. So next, I will introduce some basic DL algorithms. So let's first introduce some trajectory of the deep learning. So deep learning was like, the MLP was first raised by Godfrey Hinton in the 1986. And then like Yan Li Cun was developed, extended into the CNN, and then next with the power of computation increased, the AlexNet and VGG was occurred in the later year. And next, we also met a problem is how we could labeling this data, and when we using that data, the autoencoder and was coming out in the 2006. And then next, the GAN was increased to help people to generate some samples, help for the training. And besides those images, people realized that we need to, deal with those temporal information, which could be used by the recursive neural network, which is later raised by the INSEA in the 1997. And then finally, with the increase of AlphaGo and AlphaZero, people like trying to increase those reinforced learning, which will help us to, doing more AI facilitated calculation. So in our application, today we want to introduce how to use those extracted neuroimaging features like time courses, function connectivity to help us to better understand those group heterogeneity, how to predict the disease risks, and how to classify those, early phase of this illness. So here I will give an example for each features. First, let's see those traditional machine learning methods like SVM, random forest, adder boost, and decision tree. Actually, these machine learning techniques help us, working on those neuroimaging data for nearly 2 decades, and which has been used popularly before we could get those thousands of data nowadays. And even now, when we're working with data like hundreds of data, you could still see that sometimes DL performance may not be better than the original machine learning data set. So this is also raises a question, how many samples will be good enough for you really use those deep learning? And then we could see that according to those different networks like DNN, CNN, RNN, and GCN, and also GAN, how we could apply them to different types of MRI data and trying to combine them. So first, let me introduce DNN. Maybe I will just introduce some high-level concept, and Paul has already gave very vivid cartoons. I just give some basic introduction. So the DNN actually as a basic deep learning model was characterized by the unidirectional propagation mechanism, which is suitable for dealing with non-temporal features. And so here, what we could see most often, the DNN was used in the functional network connectivity analysis. That is the function networks that can be calculated by the different brain atlases or the ICA. Actually, for the DNN, the most original form is vanilla NN, which is a multi-fully connected layers. And it was the simplest but the most illustrative DL models. Theoretically, a vanilla NN could approximate any functional or mapping. But the problem is that the DNN could cause the redundancy in the training parameters, and therefore it may cause the overfitting. Therefore, DNN are most fruitful for the low-dimensional and less redundant input. So, which means that if you want to use the DNN-related networks, you'd better extract those features to make it concise and meaningful. So here's an example of using DNN. This is a PNAS paper from the Void Maintenance Group. It is here used the spatial temporal DNN to reveal the replicable, generalizable sex differences in the human functional connectivity. And here is shown that the ST-DNN could achieve a high cross-validation, which is more than 90%. And next is autoencoder. So autoencoder are unsupervised learning neural networks that could mine the key information from imaging data by means of self-learning. And these features can subsequently be used in the disease classification and the recognition. So the autoencoder usually has two parts, encoder and decoder. The encoder processes the input data and compress it into a compact representation, and we often call it a context vector or latent space, while the decoder will then take this representation and convert it back to a meaningful output. These encoder-decoder models are suitable for tasks that search at machine translation. And form of the improved form of decoder-encoder is VAE. So VAE is usually generated for the generative tasks, and which is also useful for randomly pick points from distribution to generate some diverse outputs. The most popular auto decoder-encoder models was transformer, which is usually worked in conjunction with RNN and some attention mechanisms to help us interpretability. Here is another example of the CAE and VAE, which was published in the Science to trying to discriminate autism from healthy controls. And here, actually, this study is using the ABIDE-1 dataset and the spiral dataset to validate it. And actually, he validated his results in the ABIDE-2 or another dataset. So basically, they didn't claim those classification accuracy, but they verified that the VAE was worked in the different sites, and could help us to see these subtypes of autism and help us understanding their heterogeneity. And then next we go to CNN. So we know that the previous CNN was mostly used for the 2D natural images, while for those MRI data, we usually at least have a 3D structure or the fMRI contrast maps. So the convolutional structure of CNN could effectively recognize the spatial features that is also used to deal with functional components or some complex spatial structures such as gray matter volume or the density. The CNN is one of the most dominant DL models that applied in most computer vision tasks. It was designed to process data in the form of multi-layer arrays. There are 4 key ideas behind the CNN. Yeah, it's like the local connections, shared weights, pooling, and the use of deep layers. So CNN was well suited to process the 2D or 3D T1 weighted images because they could leverage spatial information smartly. And here is an example of CNN. Here, the CNN, the improved version of the CNN, like ResNet, MobileNet, and Inception, was used to classify the EEG data of major depression patients. And it's shown that the MobileNet was superior in the local-based classification, while the ResNet shows the highest prediction for the delta frequency band, which could also show how to use EEG to classify these major depressions. And next, we go into those recursive neural networks for the sequential time processing. So we know that the RNN was designed actually to allow those information to be transferred between different time steps. Therefore, it will be commonly used to capture the temporal dynamics of brain connectivity in fMRI, such as time series or those dynamic functional connectivity features. The RNN usually models those dynamic symptoms, and one of these examples is long short-term memory and the gated recurrent unit that is GRU, which is more simplified. There are two practical variants of RNN designed for overcoming those gradient problems that usually trouble those traditional RNNs. So as we know that RNN is suitable for solving those tasks that involving sequential sequence. So on those neuroimaging data set, if you have those time series or the sequence information, which could be used RNN to deal with it. So here's an example of a multi-scale RNN that's raised by our group. So when we're choosing those time series, we know that there is a challenge, which kind of scale the convolutional kernel will be chosen. Sometimes it's hard to decide. So here we use, combine this different lengths of the scale, like a multi-scale RNN, to help us better capture this temporal information. And when we use it for the schizophrenia classification, it's also get the state-of-art performance. It's compared to other methods, increase to 2 to 5%. And finally, let's go to GCN. So nowadays, people calculate these connectivity patterns is very common and popular. We know that those connectivity patterns provide us a paragraph, which give us give us tricks how we could use GCN to capture those interrelationships between those graph nodes and edges. And here we could use GCN to deal with either functional networks or the structure networks. You know that the non-ungulate characteristics of graph features, such as social networks, usually make those convolution and filtering were not as suitable as natural images. Therefore, GCN as a type of neural network, it can capture the graph structures and aggregate those node information from neighborhood. Also, GCN are useful for the biomedical applications in those many graph structured data. And one tip is that when we calculating these graphs, we could also try to combine those different scales. For example, currently we have many brain atlases from coarse to fine, and how to combine these connectivity patterns that calculated from different scale of atlases, which also give us some motivation to better use those GCN networks. And here, this is an example of using SVM and GCN to differentiate the patients from major depression from healthy controls. And here, actually, it also used the REST meta MDD that was proposed by the Chogan, and which gave us a big data set for the major depression study. Well, we could see that here the accuracy was actually not very satisfactory, and even the sex classification was better than the MDD classification, which also tell us that there are more heterogeneity in the major depression, and which is give us more challenges how to better discriminate in the early phase. And the next is the most generative AI like GAN. GAN is also was used trying to generate some realistic samples to help us facilitate those trainings. Especially in those multi-set data set, we could also use GAN to work with this site harmonization, and also for the subtype discovery when you need to have more training samples. So next, I will just introduce some popular existing DL applications in the neuroimaging. As we can see that depending on the different features we extracted from those MRI data, like structure features, functional connectivity, and dynamic connectivity, we could apply those different network features. And more importantly, now people are trying to combine those different networks and different features to help get a finally improved version. And as for those applications, we usually have 5 categories, like classification for the diagnosis and prediction, subtype clustering, image reconstruction, and some postulation. So first is classification and diagnosis. Actually, for those deep learning, it's like one short spot. So depending on the output is discrete or continuous variables, you can use it for classification or prediction. So here are some examples for the Alzheimer's disease classification. And this one was published in Nature Communication from Qiu Shanrang. So here it's used a CNN linked with cat boost model to discriminate AD, MCN, and healthy controls. And here it's shown that the CNN linked with cat boost get the highest performance. It also compared several models, and which give us which give us very high accuracy. It's like 90.7 AUC in classifying like AD from healthy controls. And here's another one using structure MRI to discriminating AD. We could see that here it's integrated a dual attention mechanism to help facilitate those deep learning black box interpretation. And this is another one for using the graph contrast learning, using for those ASD and ADHD classification. Here we could see that it's using the AL1, AL3, and the Shen 267. They tried 3 different atlases, and using those self-supervised GNN and the graph contrast learning. And the results actually shown that the result actually they compared several atlases, and they shown that these 3 atlases demonstrated superiority for those classification of child autism. And here's another one for the ADHD classification, which is actually using the end-to-end model that is based on the function connectivity. Actually here, they combine the static FNC and sequence-based dynamic FNC and the transition of the state. So which means they combine three features of three functional features together to achieve a better outcome. And here's another one to trying to make those deep learning framework hybrid. And here we actually combine those using different machine learning parts and the deep learning parts for the different features. And for example, for the FNC, we just combined traditional SVM and the DNN. And while for the TCs, we could use those multi-scale RNN. Then based on the next integration of both function connectivity and the time series, we could get improved classification. This is also for the functional features. We could also combine the results that obtained from the structure and with function structure combination to get really multimodal improvement based on different deep learning models hybridization. And also this one is trying to use triplet GCN. And here we know that when we calculate those brain graphs, you could have AAL, you could have like a brain Nettome atlas, and also have those like 10,000, like 500 nodes brain graphs. So all those brain atlases have either fine or coarse pixelation, and which one will be best suitable for your case. So an idea is that we could actually calculate those connectivity matrix based on different atlases and then use on the mutual information learning. You are trying to get optimism that combine both coarse to fine information. And the next is some example of like a continuous prediction. And here, this is a paper just recently published in JAMA Psychiatry, which used DL learning to predict both mental disorder diagnosis and severity. And here they are using the data from the Danish nationwide register and the genetic data. And by combining these genetics and registration, they could predict both those diagnosis categories and also the disease progression in their symptom severity. And here is another one that also using the brain structure connectome to predict those sex, age, and also their cognitive scores, which is also a continuous level in those behavior metrics. And next, which might be the most popular topics in the psychosis study that most of people that are working trying to get some biological subtypes to facilitate those personalized treatment. We know that many psychoses are very heterogeneity and which is hard to define. When they first came to the hospital, it also gave us challenge which like medicines we use. And identifying those biotypes based on the objective imaging maybe could help us to deal with on those personalized medicine or targeted prevention. So actually DL models could learn these continuous severity or conditions from the binary labels, and therefore maybe could help us identify some patterns and just finally help in those clinical practice. And so in this work, we actually also use the BSNP data, which contains both schizophrenia, bipolar, and schizoaffective disorders. And here we used a clustering method based on both assay component and time series. And we could find that when we have those multi-psychotic spectrum, we identified 2 clusters. And when we're using t-SNE to mapping these clusters, it's interesting that we actually didn't give these labels I mean, the network didn't know their symptoms, but when we playing that, we could see that it automatically showing these patients have severity from mild to severe. And also, most interestingly, we could find that for this separated cluster, it contains most with those schizoaffective disorders. And when we check this part and these schizoaffective disorders, we could see that compared with their same level in the DSM-4, it could show that they show some very domain differences in those PANS domain scores with different categories, and which just gave us confidence that the biotypes identified imaging maybe could show more. Maybe could show different trajectories in their disease progress, and especially for this part, even though there are some here, the health controls, it may be classified in this schizoaffective disorder. So this part may be more suitable for those like mood disorder treatment. While for this part, maybe it will be more like a schizophrenic spectrum. And now next, we will introduce some AD subtype classifications that from Penn University's lab group. And here they propose those SMILE GAN, like SMILE GAN to identify the 4 patterns of those ADs. And also they are trying to identify that along those 4 subtypes, there are 2 distinct progress pathways, which was published in the Nature Communication in the 2022. And similarly from the same group, they are using those gene GAN to offer the precision diagnostics using those genetic data and phenotypic data. And it shows that the brain phenotypes could display the significant difference in the neuroanatomy patterns, genetic determinants, and biological and clinical biomarkers. So this was recently published in the Nature Communication. Okay, so the next part is reconstruction and postulation. So here, different from those mental disorder diagnoses, the deep learning could also be used for the super resolution. As we know that actually in many cases, the 70 images could hard to obtain. So based on those image enhancement, there are many people are working trying to use those 3T data to stimulate those 70 MRI data. And here this is a self-supervised CNN with decoder-encoder architecture, which is trying to develop to compute the personalized brain functional networks from fMRI. So here this is trying to using DL to calculate its personalized functional postulation. Here's another one that I mentioned in the 3D MRI super resolution. And here, this is from the Mackay 2023. And here they are using the latent diffusion model was to train the subjects from the UKB and trying to increase the resolution of clinical MRI scans. And this is also demonstrate, those powerful priors given by the latent diffusion model could be used for MRI reconstruction, and this might also increase the following clinical diagnosis. And this one is also for the surface registration using those unsupervised learning, which is called a sphere morph, which is a framework that can also inspire us with could help better improve those surface registration. And it has shown that outperforming the traditional methods in both speed and precision. So finally, there are some other cases used in the deep learning, such as site harmonization. We know that when we're dealing with big image data, you usually need to deal with dozens of sites now. So different sites have many side effects that we need to overcome. And here, this is one called StarGAN, which was proposed to dealing with this site difference. And here it's content. One is a style encoder, another is a content encoder. And then the generator was trying to combine both those style encoder and the content encoder from each site, and trying to produce a harmonized image with both those content and style, which is very interesting and useful. Okay. So next is DL for the multimodal fusion. This is, as we mentioned, since we have known that for each different neuroimaging features, we could use which kind of networks. Then if we have multimodal data, then people maybe could be inspired, combine those different networks or different features together using like a CCA or transformer or some cross-mutual learning to help get optimize the final output. And here is also another one for the AD discrimination. It's used a multimodal discriminative network. And when they actually when they using those MLP and the self-learning, they also trying to combine those generalized CCA as a constraint to finally project a more common discriminative space. Okay. Except to the above applications, another important information is we are trying to get a better interpretation from the black box of deep learning. And here we actually summarize from 300 papers that the most popular interpretation approaches, including three kind of like beta weights, stability-based metrics, and the prediction performance, which is usually used ablation tasks. So actually, this is the most three approaches popular in the neuroimaging individualized prediction. And also in this like a survey paper, we shown that for those prediction applications, the external validation and the longitudinal validation is more important now for us to get a real useful biomarker. And so next, these are some works from our group. We actually have also performing different areas of deep learning and trying to improve the site harmonization and disease classification and the risk prediction. And finally, the take-home message. So we know that the DL is able to outperform standard machine learning in a large-scale neural classification and prediction. And when combined with those dynamic analysis, and the DL shows strings to capture those time-varying infer. And finally, by leveraging those complementary and multifaceted information, the deep learning is more efficient and flexible than the traditional method if we have enough samples. Well, also we have need to pay attention to the balance between the task complexity and the model complexity. The DL models actually are growing in both numbers and complexity. There are also many various hyperparameters, such as wise, depth, loss function, and optimizer. So this will need us to have empirical knowledge to how to combine all those information to get a better optimize trade-off so that we could get those ideal output. And also there is a need for the theoretical framework that could determine those minimal complexity of these models. Usually, which give us, when we're doing these studies, sometimes we need to establish a lower bound for the amount of training data required. And finally, with the boost of large language model, and this is also give us motivation how to try and combine those large language model with combined with those biomechanisms. And the inner working of LLM, especially how they manage and present this information that could mimic those human recognition, actually it still remain unknown. And this is also need us to help us find it, how to use those human brain spare intelligence could inspire us for our real brain deep learning challenges. And so finally, I need to thanks to my lab members that have different time periods. This is maybe 10 years ago, 6 years ago, and 2 years ago. And also I need to thank all my collaborators and friends that in the China and worldwide. And finally, this is my research direction again. Thank you so much.
So we may take one very short question. Yes.
It might not be short, I'm sorry in advance. So the elephant in the room is comorbidity. It's ubiquitous. And the field is leaning towards the transdiagnostic perspective, which would involve deep learning applied to regression tasks, right? If we want to predict mental disorder severity on a continuous scale. So what is the state-of-the-art architecture and loss function, which yields the best predictions of symptom severity on a continuous scale? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. This is a great question. Actually, for those regression is also, which means in your training data, you need to maximize those, usually you could maximize the correlation of with behavior measures that you want to regress on, and also, define some functions that could maximize the similarity of your predicted measures with your targeted measures and add it in those training steps, which would, and also you could have other cost functions, but basically you need to have this form in your cost function to make it finally get those real prediction in the behavior. Okay, thanks.
Thank you so much. So we have